Hola. Y bienvenidos a un episodio más con Gordolift. El día de hoy vamos a tener un invitado muy especial que desde que hago CrossFit lo he seguido, ya que es un ejemplo de longevidad y es una verga a la hora de hacer gymnastics. Se llama Velas, probablemente lo han visto en Instagram como Soul. Dicen que los atletas de CrossFit tienen una fecha de caducidad, pero nuestro invitado de hoy está demostrando que en teoría eso es falso. Nos acompaña el día de hoy Velas, el alma detrás de uno de los boxes muchísimo más respetados de Miami, mientras que la mayoría de los influencers buscan siempre el atajo más rápido para tener un six-pack y verse muy mamones. Sean ha estado jugando el juego a largo plazo desde 2009. Es un veterano, aparte empresario, y en alguien que realmente importa sus sentadillas si es un desastre o no. Vamos a quitar el relleno al fitness y vamos a hablar de las verdades crueles y crudas del coaching elite. Sean, seas tú muy bienvenido. And we have Soul Sean today in the podcast. It's not my native language, so gonna get stuck a little bit. Since I like from maybe 12 years ago, you were one of those guys that in a lot of videos were shown with Danny from CrossFit Soul. Yeah. Even for a couple of years, the box that I started CrossFit, they were doing the Soul programming, so I really like it. But nice. At that time, I was quite newbie. I was a newbie, and it was really hard for me. But how you started with the CrossFit? What's your background? Because I see you go into running, you go into jiu-jitsu and that type of thing.
I've been into everything.
A lot of sports. Yeah. So what's your background?
I guess I would say I'm a typical Asian guy. I did Kung Fu growing up. But I actually started a little bit later. I didn't do that when I was very young. I got into Kung Fu when I was in 10th grade, I believe. Okay. So I guess you would say a little bit later, but I was like totally, I dived in 100%. You know, I kind of grew up watching Bruce Lee movies, Jackie Chan movies and stuff like that. So it was, and again, the way I look, it's pretty fitting to be doing Kung Fu. But that's where I really got into a lot of, you know, I guess you would say calisthenics, gymnastic movements. You know, doing Kung Fu is you're manipulating your body a whole bunch of different ways. And, you know, that's kind of where I started really getting to like doing handstands and, you know, pistols, all that kind of stuff. As I was doing
go ahead, sir.
Oh, I was doing like Kung Fu and rock climbing. So I guess you would say that's like a good mix of body weight movement before I got into CrossFit. So
and how was the jump into like how you started? Someone invited you or something?
So at that time, I was teaching Kung Fu. I was teaching Tai Chi. My hobby was doing rock climbing, and I was in college. I was kind of like, I wanted to end up being a personal trainer as well. Like my goal was to open up a Kung Fu school at the time. And so I was kind of doing a little mix and a blend of all of that. And I think it was one of my Kung Fu friends. He was a firefighter and he started doing CrossFit. So, you know, I'd be working out at a regular like Globo gym doing stuff. And my friend came and he brought some rings and he was like, oh, there's this thing that I'm doing. It's called CrossFit. And he set up a pair of rings and he showed me a muscle up and he was like, dude, I think you could do this. And I saw him do it. And luckily, like I just imitated him. And the first shot, I ended up doing a muscle up, but it was probably very ugly, you know, but I managed to get up. And immediately I fell in love with it. I was like, man, these rings are awesome. You know, obviously I did a bunch of pull-ups and stuff like that back then. So it was a new kind of challenge. And he showed me that and he was like, well, I figured you could do muscle ups. And he's like, okay, now let me show you some barbell stuff. and I don't know if you know bear complex.
Yeah.
So that was basically the first thing I learned about CrossFit. First, he showed me rings, and then he was like,
and
all right,
bear
well,
complex.
Here's bear complex. You're doing a deadlift, a hang clean, bring it over your head, put it on your back squat. So he kind of just threw everything right at me. And from there, I just kind of fell in love with it, Luckily, I was always able to kind of imitate things. And I got to thank Kung Fu for that. So, yeah, like I saw him do a muscle up. I was able to imitate it. And the cool thing about that was I had a couple friends that tried to do it as well, and they couldn't do it. They sucked. So I kind of took it upon myself to learn how to teach it to them. And I guess you would say that's like how at least CrossFit for me started, at least with the gymnastic point of view as well. And then from there, I just started getting all the equipment for it. Back then, I was just starting college. I couldn't afford going to a CrossFit gym. And back in Miami, there was probably just one, from what I recall. And I couldn't afford it. So I was like, all right, let me just get all the equipment myself. So I bought a med ball, I bought some kettlebells, I got a bar, got some plates, and just literally followed main site for, I would say, like a couple years. And then, finally I was like, all right, I need to like join a gym finally. And that's where I went to Soul. I met Danny, which I actually knew. He actually used to take some of my classes back then. I used to teach a boot camp. So everything kind of just
everything fade on in.
Yeah. Everything was like meant to be.
And when did you and Danny decided to go into open your own gym, CrossFit Soul?
So Danny had already opened up the gym back then with his wife and a previous partner. And again, once I came in there, they were just about to open up the gym. Like they were still in the middle of laying down ground, this and that. And it's funny because I had a bunch of friends that knew Danny as well. And when I was thinking about trying to find a CrossFit gym, all of them were saying not to go to their actual gym, but they're like, hey, I got a homie. His name is Danny. He's opened up a gym. It's going to be called CrossFit Soul. You should head over there. And this was even before I knew that they were talking about the Danny that I knew. So, I was kind of like seeing some other gyms, where to go to, and, doing some research, but everything like led to Soul, which is definitely a blessing, because the moment I went over there, I was like, damn, I know like half of these people. So it was a great fit.
That's nice. You've been in the CrossFit Open since 2012. That's what I look for you most, I think.
Yeah, I think in 2011, I couldn't do it because I had just got my appendix taken out. So I missed out on that. So then I jumped on, which was like the second.
2012.
Yeah, 2012.
Usually athletes, when I speak with some friends, they burn out after 4 years doing the open. That happened to me also. Like I've never been a good athlete at all. I don't have an athletic background. But after 4 years doing the open, for me, it was like, that's too much. So I do it, but only just to check on me. But in your case, that you still fit into the competitive floor, even you don't go into games or something. But how you establish yourself into longevity?
Well, it's a hard journey. I will say that you had mentioned that I was doing running for a while. I do like to challenge myself. I was very big into CrossFit in the beginning, as all of us, and I wouldn't say I ever really got burnt out, but as I was doing CrossFit, it led me to want to compete in Olympic weightlifting. especially as weights got heavier. Back in the day, I would say I had at least a little bit of an upper hand because my gymnastics were advanced.
On point.
They're okay. But then again, the weights weren't as heavy, and throughout the years, weights got heavier, and you had the bigger guys, which started to really understand and get better at their gymnastics. For me, I've been almost the same weight for like 20, 30 years. But yeah, weight started to get a little bit tougher, but if I were to compete in my own weight class in weightlifting, then, it was more of an even playing field. So there'd be a lot of times where I do CrossFit and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to compete in weightlifting for a little bit, which was still fine because you have those elements in CrossFit, snatch and clean and jerk. And then after a weightlifting meet, I'd go back to CrossFit, then maybe say, hey, I want to go do a powerlifting meet. Do that, come back to CrossFit. It's always like CrossFit is the baseline that you always come back to, just because it has every element, and I think for me, that's what keeps it exciting. I'll every once in a while, I'll try to veer towards one specific discipline, but I don't know. I get a little bit bored, and
and you always go back.
Yeah, which I did. I tried to spend some time primarily running for, I'd say, 2 years. I just finished. I did a marathon this year, and now I'm like, all right, I'm back to CrossFit. Running was fun.
CrossFit itself says that we should try to go into other sports, not just to focus on CrossFit. So that's a good thing. And it's something that people that follows you see that you're always into. I remember when you started with the running thing, because at that time I stopped following you on my personal account because I hate running, and you were talking a lot of the running things. Yeah. So I remember that time, and then you started with the jiu-jitsu thing, and I follow you. So in that type of things, talking about CrossFit itself, what do you think about the intensity and the weights that you are saying that they rise the weights in a lot of the body itself? When we see the game competitors in the 2013 or something to nowadays, we see more bulky, even the women. So what do you feel about that transformation in CrossFit? And at least I think this open, it turned it back into what it was CrossFit in the beginning. What do you think about that?
I would definitely agree. Look, the open is a great way to test yourself, and when you mention in 2013, again, CrossFit was still fairly new. So if you remember back then, the whole idea of CrossFit is to be ready, for
everything
unknowable, basically for everything. And that's the beauty of CrossFit. If you're using that as your strength and conditioning, that as your program, you should be good to go rock climbing, go surfing, whatever life throws at you. You should be able to do that. And I think we had that perspective back then. I think more people are starting to understand that now, but as CrossFit started to get more in the limelight, it did start to focus more on the competitive aspect of it, and all you would see was basically just badasses. And I think now, and again, it's just like every sport, it does evolve. People will get better, people doing it at a younger age. A moment they're a teen, they're already crushing all these workouts, but because they've had that exposure, it's weird to say we're the OGs in CrossFit, but it was definitely a different time. But, I've had my ups and downs with CrossFit. I've loved it. I've hated it. Dude, CrossFit helped me travel the world. I taught the CrossFit gymnastics seminars for 12 years, So I've been able and lucky enough to travel around the world and visit all these CrossFit gyms, and everyone kind of has open arms, just because we all like doing 21:59.
Yeah.
I'm veering off in your question, but
No, it's okay. It's okay.
What I love about the open is, like I said, I've jumped around into running and this and that, and again, I'll always try to do the open, and at least try to train somewhat for it. But my expectations are way different. In the beginning, at least for our gym, we'd always try to like have good scores to help our team make it. Back then, my scores would matter. As I got older, we had our other badasses that would take over. But for me, it's just like doing the open is a big deal, just because I want to make sure that I can still move well, I can still lift, not injure myself. I will say, like, focusing strictly on running for the past 2 years, it was fun, it was challenging, but it did make me miss doing CrossFit. Now that I'm doing CrossFit again, it's a reality check where it's like, man, once I started running, I kind of had like some knee problems from all the volume, this and that, and especially training for a marathon specifically.
Yeah.
And it's like I never had any of these injuries when I was doing CrossFit. So again, sorry for the long answer.
No, it's okay. Everything will be everything will fit in what we're talking. Like, how do you feel about this change that CrossFit made? At least this year they started with CrossFit is the medicine, and before that I feel that they changed everything into more competition thing. Like, I see the open workouts from previous years based on this year, and I see that the loads were bigger, the complexity of the movements were tougher, and now they go, at least this year I feel that they made it open for everyone. Like, I didn't show any heavy lift, I didn't show maybe the ring muscle ups that most of the people struggle with, but in previous years they were doing like 25 snatches and 275 clean and jerks, and it was like, damn, that's like for competition guys.
Yeah. Well, so look, I loved this open. This year's open I thought was great, and it was inclusive to almost all our athletes. There was ways that you could scale it where it wasn't something as heavy. It did have muscle ups, but it was progression towards it.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, like, a lot of people shit on muscle ups. Like, why is it in the open? But it's one movement that a lot of people really lack in training. If you're complaining about the open, and that's the reason why, like, you didn't make it to quarterfinals, you weren't going to make it to quarterfinals regardless. What made this open these 3 weeks so cool was, what was the first workout? It was wall balls,
the wall balls and box jumps
and
step ups,
which, what CrossFit does for the open, for at least for the first workout, they are very good at kind of creating that trap.
The environment, everything is going to be easy.
If you're on the fence about doing the open, man, they can bait you like that. So you look at that workout and you're like, okay, it's just wall balls and it's just step ups. Most CrossFitters can do that. They're not thinking it's a heavy weight, it ain't muscle ups or toes to bar or something like that. So they see that first workout and they're like, okay. Again, the rep scheme was pretty crazy, but when you look at that, the technique into it is fairly low skill. Anyone can do it. Now, that was great because it had everyone able to do pretty much the same movements. But here's the thing. the ones that are going to move on to quarterfinals, semifinals, to the games, they were going to absolutely crush that workout,
Yeah.
But you might have someone that's very new. Again, they're still going to get their ass kicked, and they just made it to like the second round. But still, that's what I think the Open is about. Being something that everyone can do, but regardless, it's going to show who's a badass. Again, people are going to complain that it wasn't heavy. Well, that's why we got quarterfinals. Those three weeks, you should be able to crush that. Okay. Now you can put in the harder skills, the heavier weights in quarterfinals, and then in semifinals and all that. I thought it was
at least for me, it was really great Open this year for me.
Yeah.
Like, I feel that I was able to do everything. I struggle a lot with the ring muscle ups, honestly, but with all the other things, I feel pretty comfortable. So even the father of my best friend, he's like 60 something, and he struggled with. He was previous weeks in hospital. He did it, like we scale it for him. But he felt that he was working out with everyone in the gym. So that was really nice.
Which is great, again, I love that element of the Open. At our gyms, we still have our Friday night lights. And I think that's what's great. We get most of our athletes to come in the evening to do the workouts. We're hyping them up. We have judges. We're like setting up heats. Dude, it's a great time. Like, a lot of us still look forward to it. And I think this year really brought that back.
That's nice.
This year, even me doing the Open, after I did the marathon, my knee got very jacked up. Funny enough, it wasn't during the marathon. It was the weekend after. I ended up hopefully my meniscus didn't tear, but I was doing an easy run, and I think my knee just had enough. So I've been trying to recover from that. So even doing 26.1, I even had to modify that. And regardless, I still had a blast. I still had fun, still went out there, did what I could without injuring myself.
Yeah.
So I think the Open is something that can really bring gyms together and, test your fitness, no matter where you're at.
That's nice. In Miami, I was for Wodapalooza 2022, I think, and I saw that Miami is like a fitness capital city in US. Yeah. How you maintain to be strict technical standard in the gym? Like, some people we have athletes, some people we have customers that just want to move. How would you struggle to put into, at least what I know from CrossFit Soul is they have a standard and that's it. Like, this is what we want. This is what we're looking for. And even you have the other type of clients that they just want to move. How would you put them into your standard thing?
So I think what's great about our gym is, again, we might be known as a very competitive gym, but it's not that at all. We've literally from all ages and all levels. The moment you actually step into the doors at Team Soul, you'll start to notice, I'll use our 9 a.m. class, for example. Just today, our 9 a.m. class we keep small classes. That way we can keep the standard right and keep eyes on everyone rather than having 50 people, doing a workout. You can't see everyone and make sure everyone's safe. We do a small cap in our classes. So it's a cap of 12. And today's workout, in the 9 a.m., you had our coach Danielle, which is basically been in our games team all years, one of our top competitors. And you'll also have one of our ladies that's 81 years old, And literally we have a mix in between that from super high level and someone that's just, again, moving just to move. And we do a good job of modifying it. We don't really like to say scale as much. People think that's like a negative word. But we do modifications. Again, everyone's going to be a little bit different. And we just want to make sure that they're hitting the right stimulus for the workout. So obviously, you know, Susan, that's 81, isn't going to be doing butterfly pull-ups or ring muscle ups, you know, but she might be doing ring rows. She still does cleans with dumbbells. Again, she moves to her capacity. Again, making sure that she gets the right stimulus. But you'll have Susan and Coach D right next to each other. And, you know, you'll have D doing ring muscle ups right next to her. But we have a whole big mixture, you know, and that's the beauty of our classes. We try to keep them small so that way our coaches can, you know, again, when I'm coaching a class, let's say you have 12 people, I might have all 12 of them doing a different variation of the workout. Again, just to make sure that it hits the right stimulus and it makes sense. You know, we're not going to have someone that's just a beginner trying to do, you know, 45 pull-ups, you know, if they can barely do 3.
How did you manage, like, for example, I'm a new guy into CrossFit. I'm going to show for the first time into CrossFit Soul or any box. How do you start with a new customer in your gym?
So we've done, again, you can do an on-ramp. We do offer that. We pretty much made that mandatory back in the day, and we've been a little bit more open now just because we have more coaches available. So, you know, let's say you jump in and you're trying out a free class. Again, that's the luxury about having smaller classes, is the fact that we can modify it, you know, to your fitness level. So if you jump in, we kind of identify exactly where you're at during the warm-up. And obviously I'd ask you a couple questions, you know, depending on what the workout is. And if you're someone new and there's like 1 rep max deadlift, we're not going to have you do that right off the bat, you know. But again, same deal. You might be a badass in deadlifting. So we'd see exactly where you're at in that warm up as we start moving, but we would definitely have some modifications.
Would you consider yourself nowadays a hybrid athlete?
A hybrid athlete. Right now, ever since I stopped doing that marathon, I've put a pause on running for a little bit. So I haven't ran since I messed up my knee, which was like in mid-January. So I wouldn't consider myself that. I guess back then I would, but I'm trying to get my knee healed and get back into CrossFit like full force. It's, again, I've missed it so much, and doing all this running made me realize that running was fun. It was a good challenge, but I get bored pretty easy. You know, not to say
I'm asking you this. I'm asking you this because you mentioned that you needed to do a lot of running, like the high volume. I know you're quite skinny, like you are like muscle ripped, but did you feel that
not anymore?
the clash of the volume running clashes with the hypertrophy of CrossFit?
Yeah, you know, for me, I felt like a really good balance was training for half marathons, because then I was still able to do strength training, still jump into CrossFit, and nothing was really affected, to be honest. The moment I started training for my first marathon, again, that was something very new. The volume was obviously double. I was doing a couple half marathons. I did more than a handful within that year and a half. But once I started doing primarily the marathon, there was a couple things that I had to give up. You know, I had to stop doing CrossFit. And for me, just all that volume of running burnt me out. Again, for me personally, you know, after I'd be running, I didn't want to do anything after. You know, I tried to keep up with my gymnastics, but it was tough to do some strength training. And again, I'm naturally skinny. I was trying to eat anything and everything, but it was pretty tough for me to find a good balance. But doing half marathons and still doing CrossFit and strength training was like perfect, at least for my schedule.
Nowadays, you will be considered like a master athlete. Do you still do the open on the 44 years ratio?
I am 41. I'll be 42 soon. So.
Okay. Do you believe in like nowadays overtraining? It's like the real physical struggle in CrossFit.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Like the programming nowadays,
yeah,
we have a lot of options, and instead of trying to look what it fits for us, so usually the programming they sell us is not like the personalized one. So we do like a open one that most of the time that I see is like they have strength conditioning and gymnastics and the skill thing and the workout and maybe 2 workouts. So do you think it's like nowadays the CrossFit programming is more into overtraining?
It can be. It really depends on what your goal is. So, you know, we have our affiliate programming, which is everything that's going to fit within an hour. And then we have our competitive programming, you know, our Team Soul training, which does, you're going to need more than an hour, you know, maybe 2 hours. It's also broken down at times in 2 different sessions. Again, it really depends on what your goal is. We are very truthful and realistic with our members, you know, or people that want to join Team Soul. You know, you're always going to have someone that says, I want to make it to the games. This is what I want to do. I want to make it to the games in a year, you know, and they've just been doing CrossFit for like a couple months. You know, we got to give them a reality check and let them know. Yeah. But again, I think that's what keeps our gym open and respectful, is the fact that, you know, we say it how it is. You know, we're not going to sugarcoat anything or be like, yeah, you're going to make it to the games, dude. Don't worry. We got you. You know, we give them realistic goals and progressions. You know, right now we have some of our athletes, their goal is in 2 years to be making it to semifinals. You know, we have some other athletes, that's already their goal, to boost up. We try to give something that's realistic and not anything outlandish, you know.
That's nice. I'm gonna be turning 40 this year, and what would you recommend me like in days on nutrition, sleep, stress? How do you handle while you are competing or training?
So, you know what, I will say, when I was 40, I felt a little bit better as far as nutrition and being able to like work out at a regular schedule. In my 30s, that's when I was teaching the gymnastics course. And I did a lot of traveling. Like, I was the guy in the beginning that they just brought me anywhere and everywhere. So in a month, I'd probably do somewhere between 2 to 4 seminars in the month. So I did a lot of traveling, and that's where it was very tough to really train and stay up to date with it, you know. Now that I'm 40, I'm not traveling as much anymore, which is great. So I can keep like a regular schedule, at least for now. I have a baby girl coming in the end of June.
Congrats.
So we'll see how sleep will be then. But I think just also being realistic, making sure that you don't overtrain, you know, when you're younger, especially when you just start CrossFit, you want to do anything and everything. Yeah.
You want to explode.
And as you get older, more experience, you start to find, you know, like, okay, this is where I need to spend most of my time training. Look, at this point right now, I'm following I'm doing a little bit of a blend. I'm doing our bodybuilding programming, and I'm just jumping into our classes. And I'm telling you, it's been the best. Like it's really sparked my motivation again with training. Sometimes doing stuff solo, you get bored. You can try to stay as motivated as you can, but to me, just jumping into a class, it makes it so much easier. And I have a blast doing it. Being with all my members, working out with them, it pushes me a lot more than if I'm working out solo. You know. But I make sure now that I'm older, like, just don't overdo it. Back then,
don't push too hard in yourself.
Sorry?
Don't push too much in yourself.
Yeah, we're not that young anymore, man. Before we'd be doing 2 or 3 workouts a day, feeling fine. Now I do 1 workout and I'm crushed.
I have a guy that it's like 22 or something, and yesterday we did the 12.1, the burpee thing, and he was like over 100, and he told me like, "Oh, I'm gonna beat you," and I said, "Of course, I'm fucking 40 years old." Like, I remember at your time that I will be like pushing myself into try to go into 100.
Yeah,
I've seen that from when I started to now. I think I'm much better into my training because I have more focus on myself, and if I start feeling any pain or something, I will stop. And I remember when I was younger, I would do like, fuck off, I will continue, and then I would be struggling with an injury or something. So like, right now I'm more conscious.
Keep going.
Yeah. No, nowadays, no. Like after 26.1, I've been having some issue with my hip groin, and I practically scaled everything from now then. So I'm really cautious about. I don't want to harm myself into trying to show off to the other people. But I remember, and when I started, I was like, just continue. Don't. I remember one day I hit myself in the box in the shin, and it was like, fuck. I finished the workout, then I run to the toilet to cry because it was fucking disastrous scratch and the pain I had.
Bleeding everywhere.
Probably nowadays I will stop and see it and just like check if I'm injured or something.
Yeah. Dude, we're getting old, man. But I think the goal is, just look, being able to still do CrossFit, again, any kind of variation of it, I think is really the goal. No matter how intense you're putting into it, again, this doing CrossFit has kept me at least feeling healthy and motivated again.
Yeah.
You don't always got to do crazy heavy weights or crazy, you don't have to do crazy workouts. Like I said, just doing burpees. Do burpees for 7 minutes. That shit will crush you.
Yeah, when someone asks me, like, I'm going to be traveling, what would you recommend me to do? Burpees for 7 minutes. That's it. Yeah. That's only you think you need.
That workout, you can make that workout horrendous.
Yeah.
But same thing for a beginner, you're moving for 7 minutes. It's still going to suck. I promise you.
Yeah. Nowadays, with all the social media and everything, why would you consider that the physical box is what it matters, like into CrossFit?
Man, nothing really beats, being at an actual box. I think, when COVID happened, everyone had to work out by themselves. What we did at our gym is we were making videos, doing Zoom workouts. We were just trying to still keep the community together and keep them moving rather than just, it's COVID, you just stay at home, don't do shit. Our gym really tried to make a push. We gave pieces of equipment. We gave all our equipment to our members. They came in, they literally like a drive-through, and we were giving equipments, rowers, dumbbells, this and that. And we really tried to make it a good job of doing that. And I think that's where a lot of people start to like realize, like, unless you're at a real gym, like it's very easy to get unmotivated or literally just do the bare minimum, you know? And again, we couldn't wait to open up our gym again, like right after COVID. But I will say there was a couple people that were still timid, you know. Again, COVID's a weird situation, but I think that's what also blew up, you know, like social media and training. And there are great, you know, online communities, you know, there's street parking, you know, stuff like that. But especially for me personally, nothing beats like physically going into the gym and, you know, even just having conversations with members and this and that is, for me, that's like, I need that, you know, like me mentally, I need that.
For me, for example, I was talking with my friends and I told them like, I would prefer to be training with people with no music, listening how the people breathing and everything, instead of being trained by myself. Like, I'm really unmotivated when I'm training at the gym by myself and no one is around. I would prefer to have people around me with no music, like zero music, instead of being in silence with myself. Like, that's too much. Like, I really like to teach people while we are working out and checking on them and speeding if I need to be better than someone, instead of being by myself, like really lazy training.
When you're solo, again, you can be motivated, but it's tough, you know. Sometimes you're just kind of going through the motions, and you know, the moment I walk into my gym, it's just like all of a sudden I'm super happy. You know, I say hi to everybody, you know, get to talk to everyone. Even when I'm like working out, it's a different kind of motivation. It definitely makes me want to do more being with my community.
With you in the as a content creator, because you do a lot of things, like I feel like teaching, maybe I delayed it later. How long right now your ring muscle up? How long it's been taking? Like 3 minutes, 4 minutes? How much time right now?
Three and change, like 3 minutes and 10, I think is my best one, which I'm guessing is a world record. I haven't seen anyone do anything like it.
How you started with that idea?
So, you know how that happened? Back then when I used to teach those seminars, you know, if I'm teaching in China, as I'm talking, I needed to have the translator repeat what I was saying. So, you know, in the beginning, I, you know, talk about the muscle up and I'm doing it. And I remember like telling them to pull to your sternum and then make sure it's nice and tight. And then the translator started talking. And I was like, oh shit. Okay, well, let me just stay here until he's done talking. And, you know, from there, I was just kind of like, oh, well, I guess it didn't make any sense to pull up to my sternum, drop down, have the translator talk. So I'm like, I'm just going to hang out here. Then I talk about the transition, then I'd wait, and then, you know, literally it was up to the translator to talk. And sometimes we'd have a translator and just keep yapping. So I ended up doing like a 1 minute muscle up already, just trying to teach the movement. So from there, I was kind of motivated to see, like, I wonder how long I could do a muscle up, you know? And I used to do it for a minute.
I remember those days.
Yeah. And then from there, I was like, I wonder if I could do 2 minutes. And then it bumped up to 3. And from there, it was just like, man, my arms aren't even long enough to try to do 4 minutes. You know, I'm going to have to go super slow. But who knows? I might try it. We'll see. But yeah, it kind of came out of necessity, trying to do a slow muscle up, just because I needed the translators to repeat what I was saying when I was teaching.
And in that, would you consider isometrics are overrated or underrated into CrossFit training?
Very underrated. You know, dude, isometrics will definitely get you strong. Again, I was lucky to do a ring muscle up on my first try many years ago, but again, I already had a baseline from rock climbing.
Yeah.
You know, so in rock climbing, you had to hold on to pieces, like, you know, literally as you're going all the way up or climbing upside down. So for me, just doing a muscle up was way easier. You got a better grip rather than like holding onto a small piece to get yourself up. But isometrics is something that I see get neglected. I mean, muscle ups in general is something that tends to be neglected, especially in CrossFit gyms. You know, you don't see many people working on strict muscle ups. A lot of people just neglect it totally, or don't even put into their programming, you know, just because they think it's a dangerous movement. And, you know, I would argue that it's not that it's dangerous, it's just that it's not being taught well, you know, or everyone's just trying to kip it. You know, everyone can work on a strict ring muscle up, you know, on towards their ability. You know, not everyone's going to go all the way up, but everyone can still practice a pull to their sternum. You know, you can even do that toenail spotted or with someone spotting you. It's just that the movement at times feels so out of grasp that people just, you know, take it out of their training completely.
I do it.
Yeah.
I can fucking do a strict, even a toes to wear. I can do it. Like, there's a lot of struggle in my body into trying to do it. I
think you.
my coach, when I started, he told me you can do butterfly pull-ups until you can do a strict pull-up, and I did the opposite. Like, I started to learn how to do the butterfly instead of before strict.
Yeah. And
because I think it was more easy for me.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when you jump into a CrossFit workout, when you jump into CrossFit, you see, let's say you're a beginner, you see all these badasses doing butterfly pull-ups, kipping pull-ups, you know, and it's such high volume, you know, that's where it gets misinterpreted, because you don't want to get stronger and do strict pull-ups. You see what they're doing and they're like, yeah, well, they're fast as fuck. I want to do that. You know, not knowing, well, yeah, you need to have the baseline. You got to be able to do strict pull-ups. You have to be able to understand how to manipulate your body before you start adding extra momentum into it. You know, even for butterfly pull-ups, I have my athletes do, I call it like, basically it's strict butterfly, but you're doing strict pull-ups while you're swinging, you know? Yeah. And I make them do that just so they can understand like the strength component needed and seeing exactly where your body is going to be going while you're swinging, you know, before they actually do actual butterfly pull-ups. We make sure that they do, like, that is a rule at our gym. You have to do strict before kipping, you know, even though what you see in these workouts, they're doing kipping pull-ups or they're doing kipping handstand push-ups. Guess what? At our gym, sometimes we'll put strict handstand push-ups, right? And again, or we'll have handstand push-ups, but you cannot kip unless you could do it strict. So we create the standard where it's like, look, you got to have this before you try to do this. No questions asked, you know? And until then, look, if that's actually your goal to get your first strict handstand push-up or strict pull-up, we're going to get you there. We're going to give you the right progressions, this and that, but I don't want you upside down if you barely even know how to move your body when you're inverted.
Yeah. And how do you start to go into that position, like upside down? Because I'm struggling right now with my athletes and customers. Like, most of the time is because they don't trust themselves into the body. Like, I'm not strong enough to handle myself. I can. So how you do the teaching
So,
of the handstand at least?
so in our programming, at times in the beginning, maybe we'll have some skill work where it'll be, inversion practice, whether that be, something as advanced as handstand walking. It could just be working on handstand holds, or again, this is your time to just get comfortable being inverted, no matter what capacity that is. Like one modification or one movement that's probably one of the best things to do, that everyone can do to some capacity, is a wall walk. Yeah. It's funny. It's before wall walks became a thing in CrossFit. I used to make people do that at our gym. It's like, okay, you can't do handstand push-ups. Well, you're going to do wall walks. And they used to give me so much shit about it. They're like, what is this movement? This ain't in CrossFit, this and that. Literally, they used to tear me up about it. And then all of a sudden it showed up in the open. And it was so funny because, again, I had our gym doing that before the open ever started. So once they announced that in the open, like the whole CrossFit community was like, what is this? And everyone at my gym was like, I was built for this. They're like, I've been training.
I've been training for so long.
I've been training this whole time for these fucking wall walks. Now it's just something that you always see. But if you think back at that, I forgot what open workout that was that introduced wall walks.
I think it was the wall walks and double unders.
Was that what it was? And then all of a sudden, now you see wall walks all the time. But speaking on wall walks, that's probably one of the best movements that, no matter how you modify it, everyone can do to some capacity. Maybe they don't go all the way inverted, but maybe they just go up again to their capacity. And think about that movement. That's going to build up your shoulders. And as far as like inversions goes, that's the only movement that you're doing where you're working straight arm strength, because you're literally like pushing your body without bending your arms. That's the idea. Like, again, nothing compares to that. So I'll have people, do wall walks. Again, that's also going to help them eventually get comfortable being inverted. And then we can start working on kicking up into a handstand. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I was just training someone yesterday and he is terrified to get upside down. Again, if you're coaching a class, you can't really expect everyone to feel comfortable just kicking up to the wall, and I'm not kidding you. He is terrified. And we did a whole session yesterday, and the whole session was just getting him comfortable and confident to get upside down, which again, I think a lot of people take for granted, but some people have just never been inverted. They've never been in a handstand, so again, we can't expect that from everyone. Yeah. So it'll be a cool video when I post it, because I'm going to post like the whole progression into it. And I'm telling you, I'm not kidding. He freaks out when he gets upside down.
I will watch it.
At the end of the session, he like got upside down, and the most comfortable he's ever felt. He thought he would never feel that way. It's, to me, that's like very rewarding. Yeah, I love when someone, feels like I'm never going to feel comfortable upside down, and all of a sudden they're doing it, with the right coaching.
Yeah. Like I do struggle with the coaching thing at the gym that I work with, because we have different ways of coaching. Yeah. And at least, for example, with one of my friends, she helps me most of the time. And the most rewarding thing for us is like when they start to do something they were struggling with, but it's not something that we can reply with the other people because they are not training with us. Mm-hmm. So I always tell to the people, like, for example, this morning when I was coaching, one of the guys was teasing another member because they were not doing we did 5, 10, 15 the air squat thing. And I remember that day when he started, he was barely going into the squat position, like even not to parallel. And nowadays he goes to parallel and maybe some of the reps he's doing. So he got annoyed because that guy was teasing him. And I was telling him, like, for me at least, I remember your first day. And now I see you go into these positions. And for me, it's fine. If you can do it right now, like the workout with that, for me, it's fine. So stop listening to him and that's it.
Yeah. Man, it's everyone's journey is different, you know? Again, we can't expect everyone to just squat all the way down immediately. Everyone's going to have their journey towards that, basically, you know? We can't expect everyone to just hit the standard just like that. Again, some people have never even squatted until they jump into a CrossFit workout. You know, you got to tell them what the standard is, but depend on their limitations, you know, do something that is going to lead them towards achieving that standard.
I don't know if you have seen what we do in the content we do. We use a satire. We make satire. To highlight the average human trying to become elite. What is the toxic trait of the CrossFit community that we should love more often?
Say that again.
Like I do when I do the explanations. I try to make it easy for people, like doing funny stuff, make it funny, the content.
Yeah.
So what would you consider to be something that we should laugh more instead of being more worried about the CrossFit movements?
I don't know. I think I would really just say sometimes there's some people that just take themselves a little too seriously, you know, and you have to enjoy the journey in what you're doing. You know, like you can't expect to knock out ring muscle ups on day one, you know, and the moment someone's like not getting it right, they just dismiss it right away. I think that's a lot of like CrossFitters' toxic trait. You know, they find what they're good at and they just stick with that. But, you know, the cool thing about CrossFit is that there is so many elements into it. You have to work on the stuff that you suck at. You know, that's, again, back in the day, obviously with gymnastics, I had an upper hand. And that's when Danny had told me, he's like, you don't need to be working just on gymnastics. You suck at wall balls. Get better at wall balls.
Whoa.
Yeah. And, you know, I hated it. Till this day, I still hate wall balls. So I suck at them, you know. But again, it's something that's so easy to neglect, you know. So
yeah. What do you think about the now thing that CrossFit and WFP has? Like, do you consider it something to struggle with, like the battle between brands?
I don't think so. You know, it's again, it's another outlet, you know, and I think CrossFit needs to be okay with that. There's a whole CrossFit. There's like CrossFit versus High Rock, you know, which I think is such a silly battle. You know, I would say because CrossFit has, you know, had its up and downs, you know, same thing with the games, this and that. Like a lot of CrossFitters don't know really where to go. So they're looking for other outlets, you know, and High Rocks is like built up. And I will say this, again, to a CrossFitter, High Rocks is pretty easy as long as you can keep up with the running. So I think as far as like competition goes, you know, like you think about something like Wadapalooza, again, you need to get into online qualifiers, this and that. It's very tough to get into to compete in Wadapalooza. Yeah. Again, now they're doing a better job of like opening up more to the public. But back then, man, when the online qualifiers were coming up, that's when shit got serious. It was like, we got to make it to Wadapalooza, you know? Whereas you have something like High Rocks, again, as far as technique, again, everything's a pretty low skilled. You know, what's the hardest movement there? Wall balls, you know.
Or maybe the leg push if you struggle with the weight.
But to a CrossFitter, and that's the thing, we had like almost 50 of our members do High Rocks in Miami not too long ago, and they loved it. And really, the only thing that they had to make sure that they were training for was the running. You know, again, all in total, it's an 8K. But as far as sled push, sled pull, they've all done that. Now, again, I'm not saying that they're like badasses, you know, but I'm saying like the way of entry into it is a lot easier than competing at a Wadapalooza or something like that, you know. And I think that's where a lot of CrossFitters, especially these past couple years, have been looking for some kind of outlet. And now you're starting to see like these hybrid competitions coming up. And look at the majority of a lot of these athletes. They come from CrossFit gyms, you know, or the ones that really do well come from CrossFit gyms because they've already trained in those respects. You know, there's something, it was the weekend after Wadapalooza, which we competed in the Ethics Games, which they had in Miami for the first time. And I thought it was a great event. It was so much fun. And it had 3 elements. You're basically doing a strength element, an endurance, and then you had a Metcon. You know, so to a CrossFitter, sometimes
it's easy.
That's basically one training session, that whole competition. You know, but it's something that's fun, and it brings all elements all together. You know, I think CrossFit needs to remember that, you know, you don't always have to just be a badass to be competing.
And the last thing, just to, because it's already an hour, I don't want to take your more time. What's your least favorite movement in CrossFit?
I said it, wall balls.
Wall balls.
It sounds so silly, but I suck at wall balls, man.
How tall are you?
I'm tall for my height.
And you struggle with wall balls?
Yeah, wall balls is like, I'm better at thrusters than I am with wall balls, which is funny. It's the same movement, but
yeah,
maybe it is because I'm vertically challenged. Gravity comes at me harder with that med ball.
And your favorite movement, not talking about gymnastics because you are a beast on that.
I'm okay. I do enjoy doing clean and jerks. You know, snatch used to be my favorite jam, but I haven't done that in a minute, especially since my knee. So I've still been trying to keep up and start doing some like clean and jerks again. I like moving the barbell like that.
That's what I said. The one piece of gear that you can live without.
Say that again.
One piece of gear you can't live without from the CrossFit gym. Something you will need. Something you will always take with you if you're gonna train.
Piece of gear.
Gear.
I don't need anything. I don't need anything. I will say, like, you know, talking about gymnastics, I never wore grips or anything like that. And now I'm starting to put on some grips. I can't have my hands all messed up when I have my baby. So I'm testing out grips again.
How you feel with?
I'm getting used to it.
Like I have never been able to do anything without the grips. Like when I do pull-ups, like straight ones, of course, but I always, to any gymnastic thing, I wear my grips. Maybe when I try the ring muscle ups, I don't use it because I feel that I'm gonna slip.
Yeah.
But for everything else, I need the grips, like always. I started to wear them because I don't remember. It was a workout with I think it was double unders, cleans, and chest to bar pull-ups. I think it was the 16.1 or something, but I ripped off the whole pound. Like
Yeah.
all the skin worked, a lot of blood. That's when I started. But I always recommend people to wear the grips, honestly. Always.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. Like, I have naturally dry hands. And again, I came from a rock climbing background. So we just use chalk. I barely even use chalk at times. Now I'm like trying out grips, and grips now are crazy. You know, you have all these different variations of it. So it's cool
materials.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm getting used to it. I used to be able to just use my bare hands all the time. If my hands were starting to rip, I would honestly just use my shirt and cover it with the bar. But again, I got to keep my hands nice now.
That's nice. Well, thank you, Sean, for the thought. I really appreciate. I've been trying to set the day with you because you're always busy, but I really appreciate your time. And thanks again. You are like one of those guys that I've been following for so long. And I really appreciate that you accepted the interview.
Dude, of course, man. Thank you for having me.
And if you ever come to Mexico, let me know. I would love to go into one of your seminars or something.
Dude, let's make it happen. I'll do a workshop over there.
That would be amazing. Okay, thank you and appreciate.
All right, dude. Have a good one.
Bye-bye. Have a nice day.
You too.
Y muchas gracias a todos los que escucharon este pequeño episodio de podcast. Les agradezco mucho y que tengan un buen día. Adiós. And recording.